Hello, I'm Tam Kaur, podcaster, author, and content creator, and I'm here today with Involve, a DEI consultancy that enables leaders to build more inclusive organizations. Here today for a special roundtable on women in business. Involve also publish annual role model lists that spotlight the work business leaders are doing to drive inclusion within the workplace. And today I'm talking to Becky Doe, 2023 Enable Role Model, Danny Harmer, 2023 Outstanding Role Model, Hannah Reid, 2024 Empower Role Model, and Involve's founder and CEO, Suki Sandhu, to discuss their personal stories, advice, and insights for women in business. I'd love to start us off by asking you all what you do and what you love most about it. Danny, would you like to start?
Yes, Danny Harmer, Chief People Officer at Aviva. So I look after people and culture at Aviva. What I love most about what I do is that the performance of an organisation is made up of the performance of its people. And every day I get to help 22,000 people be just a little bit better.
Amazing. How do I follow that? So what I love the most, different diversity, different culture. And as my role within asset management in HSBC is that I get to meet various different people and also tell the story of why investing is really important, particularly for women.
It's amazing actually there's another HR professional. Yes. So yeah, well, we won't dominate, but anyway. Hannah Reid, I'm the Europe, Middle East, India and Africa People Director at Apple. And I guess for me, it's the fact that no 2 days are the same. And that's what I love most about my job. It's multifaceted. And the fact that I've got this expansive region that covers so many communities and cultures definitely gives me energy as well.
Fantastic. And I lead two businesses, Audalis and Involve. Involve is the inclusion consultancy that you mentioned. So we drive inclusive cultures. And Audalis helps companies with recruiting senior, diverse talent for the leadership and boardroom. And what I love about it, what we say in Audalis is we're changing the world one senior hire at a time. So putting more women, more people of colour, more LGBT plus into those positions of power. And I love the fact that we're helping everyone in business feel like they belong. Mm-hmm. So they're being seen, they're being heard, and they want to stay. That's kind of what I love about what we do.
I love that. Thank you all so much for your answers. I'm a content creator primarily on YouTube, and I help women become the best version of themselves. So one thing I do a lot of the time is help women locate their limiting beliefs and replace them with positive core beliefs to help them achieve their dream reality and dream selves. So I'd love to ask you all, what is one limiting belief that you got rid of? And how did this change your life?
One thing, and again, anyone who's heard me speak before will have heard me say this, and if I wasn't afraid of needles, I would have this tattooed on me, which is you can't outperform your own level of self-esteem. So I guess that was my kind of guiding principle. And there was a moment that changed, I guess, my life, or my trajectory at least. So I used to work for the police. So I've been in HR for over 20 years. So this was, a lot of my experience will come from the police. And we used to, for International Women's Month or International Women's Day, we used to bring a lot of women together to celebrate other women and to often have people talk similar to this forum and share their advice and inspiration. And to be honest, even up till now, I had never actually been to a talk like that, where there was a woman who looked like me before. That just had never happened. And in this instance, that wasn't the motivator, but it was someone who I could actually relate to and draw some inspiration from. And it was a lady at the time who led the Financial Services Authority, and she came to do a talk just about her life and her journey. So nothing dissimilar to what I'd heard before, but it was when she said that she had 8 children that really kind of resonated. And then there was a weird break. I don't even know why there was a break at the time, but she kind of left that as a cliffhanger that she'd had 8 children. So we all start speaking, going, she can't have 8 children. She can't have 8 children. Oh, what's probably happened? She married someone and maybe he had 6 kids and she had 2. And then she came back on the mic and she's like, no, to be clear there, I had all 8 children. And then like the break ensued. It was like, wow, she's got 8 children. That really inspired me because I was a mother at the time and a young mum. I had my son when I was super young, had him when I was 22 years old. With my husband, who I've been married to for 23 years now. So everything was very young in my life. And I was wrestling with, how do you have this super successful career whilst also juggling kind of childcare? And what are the actual tangible steps that you have to go ahead and do? And she, for me, became an inspiration. Like if I'm wrestling with just one child, she has 8. And that became almost the substance of some of the questions. How are you actually juggling this? How are you the boss of all of these people? How did you tangibly take those steps? And it was all about taking risks and taking bets on yourself. And that really motivated me. And literally right after that, I went back and I spoke to my boss almost about the steps that she said. It was like, okay, where's my career going? What do I want to do? That intentionality. And I kind of took that and moved forward with it. And once I understood that this is a skill you need to learn, which we talk a lot about growth mindset in terms of what we do, similar to your introduction about what you do to help women. Once I understood it was a skill, then it was more about how do I apply this skill? What are the steps that you need to actually take control of your own destiny and reframe your own narrative? So that's why I say you can't outperform your own self-limiting beliefs. If I've told myself there's a ceiling, if I've told myself nobody looks like you will be the first at each time, then I'm holding myself back without even knowing that I was doing that. And she, I suppose, was a breakthrough for me without even knowing that that's what she was. So
That is such a great story.
Can I just ask, was that Helena Morrissey?
yes.
Yeah, it must be.
Yeah. She actually has 9.
Oh, so she's had a baby.
No, she's had another one.
Yeah.
another one.
Yeah, we had
This was
one.
a long time ago.
Yeah, so she's got 9.
Well,
Oh my God.
Yeah. She's amazing.
yeah.
I need to look her up.
Becky, what about you?
Yeah, so my sort of limiting belief at the time, again, quite young, was my voice didn't matter. And I think for me, particularly coming not from the UK, not a native English speaker, I was always quite worried that my English needs to be perfect. You know, people need to understand my English properly. And often that sort of reserved me where if I think completely different from the rest of the team or the rest of the people in the room, I was like, but I'm afraid, I'm scared. Like, you know, what if I can't explain the way that I mean really in my head? Because everything sounds in my head amazing, but actually when I actually say it out loud, it didn't. One pivotal moment for me actually was when I went through the assessment center with Mattel, you know, the company that make Barbie's toy. I still remember this to this day, where it was full of, you know, non-women candidates, and everybody was like agree with all of these brilliant ideas. And I sat there thinking, it doesn't make sense, but what should I do now? And for whatever reason, it came to me. I decided to speak up. And, you know, for about a split second, everyone looked at me as if, like, is she going crazy? This is completely opposite to the rest of the group when going through the assessment center. To my surprise, actually, what they've decided after that assessment center, they created a role that wasn't there for me because they found something that I could see that nobody saw before. And since then, I thought to myself, you know what? It's not about the what. It's more about the how. How do I position myself? How do I actually acknowledge that people got different opinions, but this is my personal experience, and that's why I believe in that. Since that moment, it's sort of completely changed for me. You know, every time I go to a meeting, for example, I look out for that sort of more reserved, quiet person to see, actually, have you got something really interesting to say? But because you're scared that you go against the rest of the group, for example, that's sort of limiting that belief. So for me, it's about not just me now. It's like looking out for those that are more reserved and quieter to really make sure that their voice is included.
I love that you used your experience to help with this.
Yeah.
That's so nice.
I think you sound amazing.
Thank
By the way.
Thank you.
Danny, what about you?
I mean, I think I am really lucky. Since we're talking about women in the workplace, I think I'm really lucky that I was raised by a strong mother with a strong sister. And therefore, until you go out into the world, you go, well, all I knew was women, really. I mean, obviously, we had men come to our house. It's fine. It wasn't some sort of weird cult. But all I knew was women. And it just didn't occur to me that there was a difference in terms of what you want to achieve in life. I went to a girls' school, and actually the school I went to was really sort of empowering and enabling. Again, you know, I was very fortunate. I remember when I first went to university, which was really the first time I started to encounter, you know, men and women in the same sort of space and beginning to get a sense of, hang on a sec, like, all the lecturers are men. What? You know, why is that? And I wrote to one of my mother's friends who had been amazing woman, had been a sort of house matron at Eton, like, you know, looking after boys at the time. And I wrote to her, some of you won't know what this is. You get paper out and a pen and you write a letter because there was no email. I am really old. And I said to her, I'm just looking around me and going, you know, all of the senior people I'm encountering in the space I'm in now are men. And I know I want to have children. You know, I was young. I wasn't, you know, attached to anyone particular. I know I want to have children. And I'm just a bit worried about how you can have it all. And she wrote back to me and she said, you can have whatever you want. You can have whatever you want. You just go for it. You know, I believe in you. There we go. We thank Dorothy, which is her name, for that letter, because I went, right, from a gender perspective, I'm done. I'm out there.
Off I go.
Yeah.
Girl power.
Yes.
Yeah, skill power. And then, Suki, your team actually helps women get into top leadership roles. And within that experience, have you noticed a difference in how men and women go after their dream job?
Yeah, 100%. And I'm sure you've all seen this too with hiring for your own teams. Women and actually minorities generally, they really undersell themselves when they're applying for roles. So let's say we're hiring, I don't know, a CFO for a listed company. When we're doing the interviews, you'll see the woman start to undersell themselves and start talking about what they can't do. And I normally stop the interview and I restart it. I'm like, hang on, let's start again, because I know the guy that I'm going to interview next probably hasn't read the job spec and he's going to tell me you can do everything. So let's focus on what you can do. That's what I want to know. And let's focus on that, because we need to position you with the client, with the CEO, with the strengths that you bring to the role. I see that a lot. And so it's a little bit frustrating. And I suppose with men, with them winging it, and I suppose they're faking it till they make it, we should probably do the same. Why not? If it's working
Seems to work for them,
why
yeah.
not make it work for us?
Yeah.
Like, you have to play the game, unfortunately. I don't necessarily like the game, but that's what it is. That's what it is at the moment. It's not changing fast enough to be more inclusive for women, unfortunately. Otherwise, we'd have 50% women FTSE 100 CEOs, which we don't, really, at around 10%.
And the other is that practice piece, which is what you're enabling them in that moment.
Yeah.
Who has before stopped them and said, do you realise that what you're actually doing is telling me what you're not good at and not what you're good at?
Yeah.
Like, when do people practice for job interviews? When they go for a job interview,
Yeah, exactly.
right?
Yeah.
And so often it's like the people who've perfected the art of interview who then get better at it, but that's not really what you want to do. You kind of don't want to be doing it in the moment. There's that intentionality to your point before you even go for the process.
Yeah.
Interviewing application, I go there and say, there's 10 qualification, but I only got 9. No, I'm not going to apply.
Yeah.
Well, to your point, Suki, the men before don't even read the application. It's like, yeah, I can do it.
Yeah.
I get there, and I wing it.
I would love to use this roundtable discussion as an opportunity for us all to support one another. As women in business, we're often juggling so many different responsibilities that intersect the personal and the professional. So I would love to hear how you've perfected working smarter over harder, and we can share our hacks with each other.
The thing I do, the small things make a really big difference, right? When you have a busy life. So this is so boring. I'm apologizing now. The every evening I look at the weather for the next day, and I look at my calendar for the next day, and I get out the clothes I'm going to wear, because you make a much less good decision and it takes you much longer if you mither about it in the morning, right? So it's out, underwear, the whole lot. You know,
I do the same.
exactly.
Yeah,
See,
absolutely.
it makes such a difference to the start of your day as well, because you start feeling ready and on it. Right? If I exercise early. So really good discipline, organization makes a really big difference. And then I think, in life, I say my children would be rolling their eyes right now. Life is about choices. So you make the choice, you make the best choice you can at the time, whether it's a school concert or being with your mum or being at a big presentation or being here. And then you go, and I'm now going to just give myself a break about the choice I've made and be fully present in the place where I am.
Good.
Wow. Well, I don't pick my clothes in the night before, but the biggest hack that I found was I dress my children in their uniform going to bed. So first, honestly, it's life-changing. Like, in the morning, I don't have to go get your kid. Everything ready. Wake up, brush your teeth, breakfast out the door. And then I have a bit more time for myself to pick out my own clothes.
I'm obsessed.
So that is my...
That needs to be filmed. We need to see that.
We need to see that. Do you make them
Day in the
sleep
life.
in a
Yeah, I was gonna
creasing
say.
way? Do they?
Honestly, because the uniform is so brilliant, they're not creasing at all. And I thought to myself, you know what? They're going to go in school, be creased, be dirty, and practice anyway. Doesn't matter. And they're happier in the morning. So yeah, that's my tips.
It's too late for me now. My kids are
Yeah, mine too.
out the door, but yeah. I'll build on what you said. Actually, mine's very similar to what Danny said, but so I'll build on that instead and say it's also for me about the saying no to things as well. I think everyone, and I think the more senior you become, the more opportunities you get, and so the more you want to do, be involved in so much more. But that perfection of no, because for me it's all about impact in the day, right? So there's always going to be more things than you have time to do, but we all have the same amount of time, right? That's the one thing. And in the end, time is all we have. It's my one Steve Jobs quote that I often reference. And so for me, it's like, what can I not do today? It's almost like I start that way round to what can I do? And then that Pareto principle, right? 80-20, what's the 20% that's going to have the biggest impact on my day, and prioritize from that way forward.
I love that. I use the same thing. And I love what you said about what can I not do today, because I heard something really similar that helped me, which was when you look at your to-do list, what is the thing that's going to get you 80% of those results and get you closer to your goal? Because spending 2 hours going through emails isn't going to really contribute that much to getting your dream life. So like Suki had mentioned before, women are often taught to minimize themselves, and breaking out of that can be really hard. So do you ladies have any advice for women who struggle to put themselves out there?
I mean, one of the things that really frustrates me is when people talk about, and I get irritated with myself for even mentioning it, imposter syndrome, because what we do is we kind of give something a label and credibility that tends to be applied more to women. And I'm like, when people say, I get imposter syndrome, I go, no, you don't. You're just getting nerves. And everybody gets nerves, and that's fine. Don't give it permission and power over you by giving it a label and making it a thing. You just got nerves. And nerves, we have to remember, a little bit of adrenaline, it's just rocket fuel. So we just need to channel it and just, use it to energize what we're doing. Because actually, somebody who is standing talking to you and is not energized and has not got a little bit of adrenaline comes across as dull and low energy and uninterested in what they're doing. So if you can breathe and talk, you're fine.
Thank you. I take that advice the minute I sat down next to you as well. My advice would be, and actually, because I remember seeing a quote as well, is that the only person that can make you feel small is the voice inside your head. Nobody else can make you feel small because it's what you tell yourself. And I often feel that actually, speaking to other women as well, everybody got their own security. So finding, that sort of, common ground, really find yourself in helping them as well.
Step into your fear. So literally, fear is what holds people back from achieving their dreams ultimately. And if people did not have fear, you ask them, what would you go out and do? All of a sudden, the list of things changes. So it's how do you get comfortable becoming more of a risk taker? And that risk is, what's the reward? So you're betting on yourself, if you think about it from that perspective. And it's similar to what we've been talking about. It's a skill. So it's something that you need to practice. It's something that you then learn. This belief that, failure is holding you back from something versus failure is actually a great enabler for development. So vertical development, how you stretch yourself, right? That vertical piece, most of that comes from when you put yourself in an uncomfortable position. And so uncomfort and fear, the two go together. So I literally look for uncomfort, especially people, like, this is a sad thing, people in my team would also roll their eyes. And when I'm like, oh, they don't like this. So this is exactly what you need to go and do. And early on in my career, one of the first things that I had to do was just answering the phones. And I had someone be so rude to me. And so I was kind of avoiding the phone. And the boss I had at the time, she noticed it. So she was like, right, I'm diverting my phone to your phone. So the phone would ring even more. And so I couldn't avoid it. And that was it. It was like, then once you've broken past that kind of, this is just a small example. Once you've broken past that thing, then you get more and more comfortable with it. Public speaking is another one. It paralyzes people. So how can you start small? Is it speaking at, like your child's school? But actually maybe 5-year-olds are less forgiving. It depends how old your child is. But is it maybe in a team meeting where it's a smaller team and then getting to a larger team? How can you give yourself exposure to those things that make you uncomfortable? So for me, it's definitely stepping into your fear. And the other one I'd say is like the piece of information. So again, lots of talks like this people will go to. As I say, I went to lots for a long time and then they didn't resonate. And sometimes I think there's that person who can help you make sense of these little tidbits and advice that people are giving you. Right? Don't step into your fear in the sense of doing something so magnanimous that actually the fall is too great. It's like, oh my gosh, she said step into your fear. I did that. And then now I've got no career. Like there's baby. So I kind of want to caveat that. There can be baby steps, right, towards doing something. Maybe speak to someone. I've been toying with this idea. What do you think? Maybe bounce that idea for someone else if you're not too sure where to start with something as well. So my slight caveat to that.
I love that. But the key message there about stepping into a discomfort, I absolutely love. And it links into what Danny said as well about imposter syndrome. I actually heard someone say, if you ever feel like you're in a room and you're experiencing that imposter syndrome where you think I shouldn't be here, you're actually moving in the right direction. You should never feel comfortable 100% of the time. Feeling those nerves and feeling that discomfort means that you're actually growing as a person and making progress on your journey. So Suki, you and your team support women in growing their personal brands and their careers. So what advice do you usually give them to stand out?
Yeah, there are a number of things that we tend to do. I think when you think about personal brand, I normally think of social media. So I know some of you use social media more than others. I know you love your Instagram, done in your fitness stories. But like sharing your story, actually making you more human. So like have an opinion on issues both professionally and personally. Let people realize you're more than just an executive in a top job. Like I think even now with CEOs, they're not sitting on, they can't really sit on a fence anymore because they have to have an opinion because people are expecting it. So I think using social media in a positive way is a good step. I think when you think of like professionally standing out, so like your CV or resume, make sure you're really blatant about your achievements and back your achievements up with like numbers and data. So they're not just platitudes, then that's pretty important. I think it's really important when you think about progressing your career, like know your worth in the business. Like don't be afraid to ask for the promotion, step into your fear, as you say, because that is a fear for a lot of women, that they don't want to be seen as too demanding or asking for too much. So that promotion or pay rise, go for it. Don't be scared to ask for it, and know when to leave. If you feel like you're not getting anywhere in your business, be it there's a glass ceiling, you're not getting the support you need, you're not feeling included, go somewhere else. And I always caveat that with also, caveat that with, don't leave and have nothing to go to. Like, you can dip your toe in the market and see what's out there without leaving. So particularly economically, you just never know what's happening. It could be harder to find a job, particularly the more senior you might be, because there's fewer opportunities. So don't just leave without anything to go to, unless you've like got savings and a cushion to maybe look for a year, wherever it might be. But yeah, dip your toe in the market and see what might be out there, to see and compare it with what you have at the moment. Compare their culture with yours. Like, compare the comp. We do find like a lot of women in processes that we have, a lot of the hiring managers we work with, like CEOs and chairs, are largely men. And what I find frustrating at the end of a process at the offer stage is when, if it's a woman candidate, you sometimes find they'll look at what the comp they're on before, which is normally lower than men, which is why we have a gender pay gap, is then they try and lowball the candidate. And I'm like, no, we don't stand for that. We try and fight the candidate's corner because they're not in the room, because we're never going to close the gender pay gap if we don't.
Yeah. I love that. Really good practical tips there. Thank you so much. I feel like as women, the odds are often stacked against us, and there are so many obstacles we have to fight through, whether that be professionally or personally. So I would love for you all to share an experience where you took a leap, whether that was professionally or personally.
Winding back to when I was pregnant, when I knew I was pregnant with my second child, I was under redundancy notice because the office location was moved to a different city where I knew I didn't want to move. So I knew coming into my maternity leave, going back, I would be under redundancy notice. And obviously, as you know, having children change your mind, change your perspective of life completely. And at the time I thought, you know what? I quite enjoy singing nursery rhyme at home. Maybe I should just take that redundancy and do things that I've always wanted to do, like, you know, go and do singing or do volunteering, etc. But something changed because I tapped, similar to your advice, I tapped into my support network for those that actually would speak about me when I wasn't there. And one of my old colleagues at the time saying, look, I've got this really new role that we've never done before. Would you be interested? And it was something to do with digital accessibility. It was something to do with making all of our mobile app and online platform accessible, especially for those with disability. And I remember going there to meet a few of the colleagues and customers. And I thought, you know what, I don't know anything about this, but what I know is I want to make a difference. Because seeing a blind colleagues that actually couldn't access some of the mandatory learning, for example, seeing a colleagues that join Zoom who is having hearing impairment that couldn't understand what was said because there was no live caption. I knew that I don't know what I was doing because I know I needed to learn, but I know that I want to change that. So I took the leap. And actually, it paid off really well because within 6 to 9 months, I was becoming a geek. I was obsessed with learning about digital accessibility. I was trying my voiceover from the Apple phone. You know, I was doing everything that I could so that I could really understand what's the barriers that fit. And within about 9 to 12 months, actually, we took it completely different level. We fixed more than 90% of the issues, and we started sort of creating this culture, not just about you have to do this, but actually it's the right thing to do. So then, you know, the inclusion about digital accessibility became a thing. And then I started getting involved with the employee resource group, which is where the passion grew and grew. And I get, you know, co-chair with the Ability Network and meet more and more people, like inspiring stories. So that's that. Yeah, I never thought it would happen.
So mine, my major pivotal role was when I worked for the police. I worked for the police for 8 years. I wasn't a police officer. I worked in HR, as I said before. And I'd got to the point of being head of HR, which is there's probably a big challenge moment in there. But I was very young when I did all of that. And that happened really quickly. And I was fortunate enough to actually do a lot of things nationally as well. And working with the Home Office. And again, all very young in my 20s. And then it got to a point I'd been there for 8 years, similar to where you were saying, know when to leave. And I'd said to my boss at the time, hugely inspirational woman, I need to go and do something else, right? Like after a while, there's only so many times that you can redesign the police force to kind of keep responding to the government comprehensive spending review, which basically just means cut more cut more money. There's only so many times I can do that. She then left the organisation. She went to work for Allianz Insurance, and I had a new boss come in. And again, things were fine. I was very fortunate at that time, right? Because I was literally kind of doing what I want, living my best life. But in the public sector where the financial reward maybe isn't the same as for other people. And then she called me up a year later and was like, do you still want to leave? And I was like, yeah, but now I'm leading on this program and I'm doing this thing, so I'm not too sure about it. So we've got a job at Allianz I think you'd really love, but it is no longer in a leadership position. Because at that time I was head of HR, I was one of the most senior black women in the police service, you know, and all of the kind of things that came with it. We were winning awards, etc. And then she was like, but so it means taking a step back. So you'd be responsible for one of the largest sites outside of our head office, but you would no longer be running, you know, the HR department anymore. It'd be like effectively a HR manager role, but it's commercial now. You're in a commercial environment, you move into private sector, and you don't know that world. So, you know, in terms of getting parity, all the other jobs I was looking at otherwise would have meant staying in the public sector. So I was like, okay, I'm going to bet on myself. I'm going to take a risk and I'm going to leave and I'm going to move backwards, which at the time I remember my boss going, you're going to go, why? Have you seen the title of the job? And I was like, no, I know. I'm moving backwards because I back myself. And at some point, I'll get back into a leadership position. So it was a big risk. I didn't know anything about insurance. Obviously, I'd never done that before. And then I moved into that. And it was like in Milton Keynes. Everything about the job was completely different. I was no longer in London. I was driving to work. If you name it, it was kind of different. And further away from my kids and all of those sorts of things. But it literally was transformative for me. Like it was that first intro into that commercial environment. Actually working for an insurance company was helpful for me just in terms of the risk-taking element. There was actually lots of synergy to the police, you know. And then HR's HR. It was like, actually, what are my transferable skills? And that was actually also for me, in terms of even thinking to now, that transferable skills, that's when I truly understood what it actually meant and how I was going to attack that role in terms of, I'm not going to sit in this role forever. This is going to be a role where I'm going to learn as much as I can, as quickly as I can, and I want to get back into that leadership position, but I want to do it in a commercial environment. And so that's kind of mine. I think it was a leap, but a different leap. It was like a leap backwards to go forwards, if that makes sense.
But it paid off.
Yeah.
You're not doing too shabbily now.
No,
You're doing all right.
I'm doing okay. And I followed through. Like literally at year 3, I was like, you're done now. You know all it is to know. Like you've proved to yourself that you know this. It isn't that you just knew policing. You've done really, really well. I was lucky. I got to like lead lots and lots of things across group and no longer just at site level. And so I kind of ticked all those boxes that we said about what for the male perspective. And I was like, I need to leave. And I just got really comfortable in this kind of, once you know you've hit your ceiling in the workplace and you know there's more for you, get comfortable with kind of looking outside to go for those opportunities.
But I think you raised another really interesting point about talent is, which I say this to diverse people all the time, be really good at your job.
Yes.
The reason you got the Allianz opportunity is because your former boss went there, thought you were fantastic and wanted to bring you along. If you weren't good at your job, you'd probably still be in the police.
Fair.
In fact, you might be the chief constable, whatever you call it, I don't know, chief of police, commissioner, Rashida Dick. You could have taken over at there.
So luckily she's no longer the police.
She's not anymore, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like that for me is, because I was doing this speaking engagement last week and someone asked me that question, on Monday actually, and someone asked me, what advice would you give to someone who's doing like inclusion on top of their day job? And I was like, your day job is more important. I was like, you need to be really good at your job because we need you to climb the ladder and be in the C-suite and get the top jobs, because when you're there, you can do even more.
No, absolutely.
Like I think it's really important to do the ERG stuff and inclusion, but don't forget to be really good at your job.
No, absolutely.
Yeah, and mine, sorry to be boring, mine are about moving. My leaps where I've gone, I've done the right thing. And they're sort of, some of them less well considered than others. One in particular, which I will share so that no one else makes my mistake, although it did work out, which is that I was at Lloyd's Banking Group and I'd previously been at the Halifax. Lloyd's acquired the Halifax. And, you know, we'd been through the sort of financial crisis. It had been a really tough time. So I had this sort of love for the organisation and I'd been there 16 years and I just really did not want to leave. And finally, one of my bosses did me a massive favour. It didn't feel like it at the time, and I'm still not sure I'd like to have dinner with him, where he said, he asked me to cover a job on an interim basis. And I said, yeah, okay, fine. It was my dream job, running HR for all the networks. And I was like, but I mean, presumably you're going to give me the job permanently. And he went, well, we're just going to see. He did that thing. We're not sure if you're strategic enough. Outrageous. And it was actually, bless his little heart, this little cold, black, empty, because I went, all right, fine. screw you, my friend, and went and got a job at Barclays and worked at Barclays for 18 months. And it just helped me detach myself from an organisation I loved, which was really helpful. But I did make sure I had another job before I did my little tantrum and went, just to let you know, my friend, you better find somebody else to do this job because I am out of here.
I love it. Love it.
Was it a dramatic exit?
It wasn't. I tried to be
slamming the door behind.
I tried to be really cool as I dropped the mic.
My next question is book related because I'm an author and I love to read self-help books. So I would love to get some recommendations on what your favourite self-help books are and why.
I can start anything by Matthew Syed. And I know they're not strictly speaking self-help books, but for example, Black Box Thinking, Bounce, Rebel Ideas, actually they are absolutely brilliant books about leadership and life and the difference between talent and work and, you know, the impact they have. So anything by proper fangirl, sad, very sad.
Well, I'm going to be a bit boring here, but I don't read actually. Or to be precise, I don't have the patience to read books. I often pick it up and it's like, nah. So I actually learn a lot from watching movies and watching music. So one of my favourite ones, self-help actually, through COVID, is Ted Lasso series.
Oh, I love
Yeah.
that.
I love
So
Ted
good.
Lasso series.
Yeah,
I
it's
sat
literally in
there.
management.
And then my
it's
husband
great.
was like, why are you feeling so deep? I don't feel anything. I was like, well, you don't get these messages. But I remember one of the scenes that still stick to me now is where he said, his dad said this, be curious, not judgmental. And every time I've got this little feeling in my head thinking, oh, that person needs to... I was like, actually, no, take a step back. Be curious, asking why they feel that way, why they said that, why, before you judge. Because we're quite quick to judge, right? We're quite quick to like, if someone did something and then we're in the bad mood and we judge them. And I thought, actually, no, Ted Lasso, sitting in the back of my head, say, Becky, don't do this, don't do this. So yeah, that's my self-help book.
So Radical Honesty, I had to double check the name of the author because I know the book, but I don't remember his name. Brad Banton is his name. Radical Honesty, it's a really good book. It's about basically just being truth tellers and what would happen in the world if we all just said what we actually think. It's probably a bit more brutal in terms of the type of honesty that he advocates for, but it's broken down in a way it would be more of a feedback. I would say it's more of a feedback culture. How do you develop a feedback culture where you start to learn how to request feedback, give feedback in all walks of life? So that happens at home with your friends, all those sorts of things. And then also the teams and people that you work with. So just that radical honesty. So that'll be one for me.
I'm sure the second book you're all going to recommend is my
Guide
book.
on D&I for Straight White Men, yes.
You might want to promote that one as well.
I did use that the other day for something. I did use it the other day for something. I was doing some learning on D&I and I went, I can tell you right now where we can get this content. I have this amazing book by Suki and it gives really straightforward guidance on
There we go.
just DI 101.
Yeah.
Dare I call it an idiot's guide? But yes, for
No,
straight
it
white men.
kind of is.
Yeah.
That's exactly what it is. It's called How to Get Your Act Together. I co-authored it with a former colleague. We published it 3 years ago with Penguin Random House. So it's not like an Amazon self-published book. It's like a proper book. And it's called How to Get Your Act Together, a judgment-free guide for diversity and inclusion for straight white men. And so what we were trying to do, having done this for so long, is we're never going to move the dial if we don't get that community on board, particularly as they dominate the boardrooms and leadership teams, both sides of the pond. And so it is basically diversity 101. So for this group, it's going to be probably a bit too basic, but a lot of these straight white men, be it from leadership and middle management, don't actually know much about diversity and inclusion, don't know the terminology. Even saying DEI, they might not even know what that is. They won't know what the E is for sure. They'll think it's equality rather than equity.
Correct.
So it was trying to like destigmatize it, break down barriers, and get them to take practical actions. And it's available on Amazon.
Well done.
Buy it now.
Probably love it. Can you make it into a series, please?
It's also an audiobook. Should I read it? There you go.
wow.
Yeah, it's an audiobook too. Yeah.
What's a barrier, microaggression, or stereotype that you have personally faced that you know a cis straight man would have absolutely not have faced?
I know women are treated differently in the workplace sometimes by some people, but I think it's really important we don't look for it and hold on to it in an angry way. I see some people, I see some women who are spending too much of their energy on kind of holding on to, they shouldn't have spoken to me like that or treated me like that. So, I mean, I'm sure people have examples they want to share, but I think actually more important is how we respond to it, which is that's about them. That's not about you. If it's inappropriate, just very politely, excuse me, why would you say that? Help them understand why it's inappropriate move on and be brilliant.
I'm quite lucky, actually. I don't think I face personally sort of, standard stereotype. But because of who I am, I take minutes everywhere I go because it's more for my organisation sort of skill. But a lot of the time that turn into, if Becky's in the meeting, she's going to take minutes. Don't worry, I'm not going to do anything, that sort of thing. For a long time, I started sort of looking back and thinking, you know what, if I'm going to take minutes, I'm going to chair the meeting altogether because then I can be a bit more control. And also I can then, make sure that, I can see different voices, etc., so that I can hold people to account. I can hold people to the action that they say they're going to do and then gradually sort of withdraw myself from the minute taker role that they assign me to and be the chair. And now, when people go to the meeting, they don't expect Becky to take minutes anymore. They expect Becky to go and chair and sort of drive the conversation. But it's taken quite a while because, and I think not just for me, a lot of the time when you go to a meeting and the more senior you get, sort of the gender balance get a bit higher, I think. And then if you see a woman, you automatically assume that person is the secretariat or the minute taker.
I've had loads. I've had them as a black woman. I've had them as a woman. I've had them my whole career. I've had them overtly. I've had racism, like you name it, I've had it. I think Danielle's point is interesting about how do you then move forward from it. I'll do the other way as well. So again, I'll go back to policing. At that time, I had it more from the black community. And that was much harder because it's like, oh, wow, when you are looking for, back to what I said about support networks and systems, when you face it from people who should be your automatic ally, if you know what I mean, that's really, really difficult. There was a lot of people who just couldn't understand, and maybe even listening just won't get, like, how could you work for an institution that has been branded institutionally racist and like you've sold out and all of this sort of, this kind of narrative and dialogue. So that's a little bit microaggressions. I know I kind of copped out a bit and didn't go deep in the answer, but I think the bigger challenge for me is about the representation, how other people see me and their expectation of me as a result.
For a straight white man, is they probably don't know what it's like to have to hide your sexuality or coming out, being in the closet. Like that's probably, from my own experience, that's probably the key thing. So when people spend a lot of mental energy hiding what they did at the weekend because they don't want to maybe disclose that it could have been a gay event, or changing the pronoun of their partner because they don't want people to, they don't want to be exposed or be discovered almost. So that's one of the key things. So I get quite frustrated with the whole coming out thing. So also coming out is a really personal thing. You do it in your own time. You don't force people to come out. But I think it's something that straight white men never really experience. Because also when people say, people choose to be gay, like, I didn't choose to be gay. I don't know. I don't know why I'm gay, but I love being gay. Like, I am proud of it. I mean, I'm wearing a bright pink fluorescent shirt, for God's sake. So, and I've got my rainbow flag, I always say, like, be queer all year, because that's like a key thing, not just in June for Pride Month. But I think, because it's like when you talk to someone straight, so when did you decide you were straight? You didn't, you always knew. So it's like you always know, you just know. See, it's like when if someone's trans, I don't know what it's like to feel like it's not your body. Like that must be a really horrible thing. But so there just needs to be more love and acceptance in the world and less hate.
Definitely.
Yes, amen to that.
Yeah.
Agree. But also I feel like as a straight person, you don't have to come out anything, right?
Yeah, you
so
don't.
Why do you expect everybody have to come out? Because to your point, it's their own personal life. If they want to share it with you, so be it. If not, don't questions and just accept them.
Exactly.
Since we're talking about workplace struggles, I would love to hear what your worst job interview was, because we all have one. Who would like to start and spill the tea?
I mean, can I just start by saying, this is really, this is going to sound awful, but I've always got the job. So I've never had a bad interview, really. I know I'm such an overachiever, but I was thinking about it, I couldn't think of a bad interview. So, and obviously I've been working for myself for the last 13 years, so I don't need to interview. So that was my experience.
I can relate. I've not had a bad interview, but I've interviewed thousands of people. So I've been in many bad interviews as an interviewer where I'm like, oh, this is, and like you wrap it, you have to just wrap it up early. Because you're like, for your sake, more than mine.
Okay, what was the worst kind of interview that you had done to maybe provide some insight for women who are nervous about doing interviews and they know what to avoid?
when you shouldn't be in this is not the job for you because you don't have any experience. So you can't answer any of the questions. And like literally just being like, did you write this resume or did whoever your friend was that wrote this resume, maybe you should have read it too so you can relate to some of these questions. So it was just apparently obvious in many an interview where people have fabricated something and then they just can't therefore answer the question and they'll just say I don't
They dig themselves into a hole and make it worse. So rather than just admitting I'm sorry it was an error on my CV, I'm sorry, they try and like create a story and it's just really awful.
I'm a bit like you. I'll stop an interview if I'm like, this isn't going well for you, and let's get, because the whole point as an interviewer is your job is to get the best out of the person. So I'm like, that's not what I'm looking for. I don't want to leave something and go, oh, maybe if they'd said this, well, let me help them to kind of get there. But in this instance, if you've made it all up, then it's just really awkward. And then after that, the person went to the other two doors. One was to a cupboard.
Oh, no. They went to the cupboard.
They went to the cupboard and just stayed there. And I just was like, do I just go and let them out? How long do we do this for? I was like, I'm gonna go. And I just opened, I was like, and I just didn't know how to come out. So I was like, okay. Walk into the other one. That's got to be one of the worst.
Oh gosh. That's pretty bad. And I mean, what I would say to anyone going for it, prepare. Make sure you understand the job. Make sure you want the job. Careful applying for a job you don't actually want. And then I think it's really important to remember it's a two-way process. Just, shoulders back, chin up, because whether or not they want you, you've got to decide whether you want them as well. So it's definitely important. My worst interview was probably interviewing somebody for a job and I was like, this is not going well. And it was for a learning job. And, I'm a great believer that if you want a job in learning, you should have a passion for learning. And I said, so tell me about you and how you keep yourself up to date with, stuff that's going on in the world. I love reading. She reads, right? Okay. Well, actually, I think maybe she doesn't. And I said, oh, okay, great. What book are you reading at the moment? And it just like, it was on the phone because it was during COVID. And she went, let me just go and get this book off my bookshelf. Oh, I can't find it. And then she gave me the name of a fiction, a novel she was reading. And I was like, oh dear. So don't say, I love doing something if you don't do it. Because in terms of, building the conversation and trying to help them and understand, you're gonna ask that follow-up question and it's painful.
What about your worst interview, Danny? You must have one.
I had an interview with somebody once and afterwards I didn't get the job, which is outrageous, just to be clear, because it was the reason I left. So just to be clear. And who's laughing now, my friends? Anyway, the person who interviewed me offered to give me some feedback and to mentor me. And I couldn't. I went, no, thank you. Because I was just like, no. Because it makes it sound like I'm a really sulky child about not getting something. But actually, we all know when you meet someone and you go, you have no credibility. You do not have the right to comment in this space on the stuff you're talking about. So thank you, but no. Goodbye, my friend.
You're so right, though, because I think, the more I think about it, it's a two-way relationship. And sometimes you go in an interview, actually, let's not waste time here. Even being interviewed, because I cannot picture myself working for you. So one of the things I did recently, probably about the last 5 years or so, is I decided to take off all of the dates in my CV. Because I thought, you know what? The length of time that you spend in a role does not equate how good you are in the role, firstly. Secondly, a lot of the times, people sort of really drill down and say, why did you take that time off? Or what's the big gap? That sort of thing. And I was like, I want to be interviewed and I want to be seen for my skills and my transferable skills, not for how long I've been in the role, how long I've been in the company, etc. And the first thing these two people interview panel asked me was, so I've noticed that you've taken off the dates from your CV. How long have you been in this, organization? So I was like, well, let me explain the reason, etc. And they insisted asking me for 5 minutes until I give them the dates. They then turn around and say, well, you look too young to be in that long. And I was like, oh, that's great. It's a compliment, but I'm not sure. Because then I thought to myself, is it means that they actually don't think I've got enough experience? And I thought after that, I was like, you know what? I withdraw the application because I don't want to work for that, sort of mindset people.
The two HR professionals, when they said I look too young, we both went, that's not cool.
We both like, no, that's not what you said.
101.
Yeah.
That's a good interview. But I think there's a good point about the two-way interview. I think that's really important. I think sometimes people assume that it's all like the sell. It's a two-way process, not only in terms of, how they make you feel, but also your opportunity to learn about the organisation. There's a reason at the end where they say, do you have any questions? It's not just to like come up with intelligent questions, but it's also for you to get a feel for, is this where I want to spend my time? Is this a place I want to give my energy to? So I think that's a good point.
So I think that's a really good bit of advice about being prepared with questions, like good questions, to show that you've actually really thought about the company and the role. Because there are definitely, when we do a search, the CEO will literally discount someone because they don't ask questions at the end, because they don't feel like they're interested. So I think actually that is a really good bit of advice, actually.
I am very judgy on that.
I am too. I'm like, ask me what? Just ask me what.
And it doesn't matter, even if you've had 7 before. That doesn't matter.
Exactly.
Don't be like, I've asked all the questions. There's still more.
But I think make it personal as well. Like, make it about them rather than the standard of what's your company policy. Well, you should have read it on the, the internet or something, Make it personal, I think.
So when it comes to difficult interviews and stepping outside of your comfort zone and all of these things that you're trying to navigate as women in business, who are some women that have supported you in your lives, whether that be professionally or personally, or role models that you have that have kind of helped you and inspired you along your career?
I have a long list of women.
I love that.
Honestly, a long list. From the very first example I gave about the phones was a woman. And actually she went on to be the godmother of my first son, actually. Through to the woman who rang me up and said, are you still interested in? After that job, another woman rang me up and was like, oh, I know you're looking for international. What about this organisation as well? And actually that was the last time I kind of followed someone, if that makes sense. I was like, after this, it now needs to be like no attachment to kind of anyone else. But literally advocated for me, sponsored, all of those things. I've been really fortunate to work with some incredible women who, to this day, like every International Women's Day, I'm like reaching out to say thank you, because I wouldn't be where I am without you, and hopefully try to do the same for others and paying it forward. So in business, like I say, lots of role models. At home, my mother's the easy answer for role model. My mum came here 50 years ago. I smile, even at the thought of her, I smile. She's just, she's precious. She's so influential and important to me. And she's the reason, back to Danny's point about like not labeling yourself with imposter syndrome, that wouldn't have ever been a thing. Because from the very beginning, she was like, you take up space. Wherever you go, take up space and you belong. And so there would never have been a notion of that. And in a world where you don't know what you don't know, having someone who's kind of filled your cup, if that makes sense, who's made you so full, really kind of gives confidence. And she moved to the UK at a time where, talk about microaggression, it was like bitterly racist, right? She wasn't allowed to wash her hands in the same space. No blacks, no dogs, signs, like she's not able to go somewhere. So the fact that just one generation later, I've been able to achieve what I've been able to achieve is so magnanimous for us and our family. And that for me is down to her being such a strong matriarch. So definitely my mum.
I mean, my mum absolutely, brought up in a house of women, strong women. My sister as well, both of them amazing, strong women. And we're all very different. But like you, I gather gorgeous women, like little gorgeous things, that just... along my career, and I feel like some people gather me and I gather some people, and two of the women who were on the leadership team when I was at Metro Bank, we are still like total besties. My current boss Amanda is an absolutely amazing role model. She's fantastic, this sort of really human and wonderful, but cares passionately about the organisation, and incredibly bright and able to see around corners. And then, women I've met along the way who still go, let's have breakfast and let's have a chat and sort the world out. And back to this point about men may network well, but women do that for women in a way that I think is it's just such a privilege.
I feel the same, actually. I feel, women remain friends. We keep in touch regularly. And at point of need, we always have each other's back, I think. But similar to you, my role model is always my grandmother. My mum wasn't present at when I was growing up, so it was always my grandma. And she grew up in a time when actually freedom of speech is nowhere near. You can't say anything, you can't really establish your opinion. But actually indoors, she was allowing me to just say whatever you like. And from a very early age, I always feel like I have to fight for equality, equity. Because if I don't agree with something, I can't keep my mouth shut. And she always allowed me to do that. And when I said, I want to move to the UK because of David Beckham, she's like, yeah, you go, girl. Let's go. And she was there with me, helping me get the scholarship and everything, when everybody else was against the idea of we don't have enough money, we don't have this, and that. She's the person to say, you go and do it. So I think for me, that's always it. And then the other thing for me is knowing her inside out. she has incredible flaws. If she doesn't like someone, honestly, even the way they walk or the way they talk, she's like, yeah, that's not the way you talk. So it's always that sort of bias. So from an early age, I could see that actually you can be amazing, but also you're just human. You have your flaws, you have your own sort of biases. As long as you acknowledge it, then, move on.
My woman role model is who we spoke about earlier, Helena Morrissey, actually. So it's really funny that you mentioned her, because she inspired me to launch Audalis and actually launch Involve, so which does the consulting side, because she launched the 30% Club nearly 15 years ago, which was about trying to drive gender diversity in the FTSE 100, now extends to the FTSE 350 and AIM listed. She's a pretty amazing woman, like a formidable character, and now the FTSE 100 is at 40% women. So they've achieved their target. Like, it's fantastic. It inspired me to launch Involve.
Love that. Love to hear more stories about women supporting women. And just like you guys said about friendships, for me is something that I can heavily relate to, where I now have such an amazing support network of women that are genuinely my friends, and we can just be having a lunch catching up, and I could be talking about a work problem and they're like, I know someone that can help you with that, or I'll get you in touch with this person. And it's so natural and effortless in, yes, I'm working on my business, but I want to see you flourish and I want to continue to see you win and just keep uplifting each other. It's so, so important when you're a woman in business to have that support. To start wrapping up the conversation, let's take the conversation outside of business and more into personal lives and work-life balance, because it's so important. So can you guys share what you do outside of work that you're really proud of, whether that's time spent with family, whether that's a hobby?
I love singing. I love anything music related. So I do a lot of sort of volunteering, singing with kids, making up story in plays and pretend we're in the band, that sort of thing, which means that my house is always a mess. But actually, when the kids come over for a play date, we always get the instruments out. And also I feel it's quite mindfulness as well. People sort of cope with stress in different way. Kids like banging the drums or playing the piano or sing and pretend they be the superstar when they grow up. For me, that's really important. And then similar to that, I'm quite lucky in HSBC. We do lots and lots of, financial education. So we have a program, award-winning actually, called Money Heroes program, where we produce and provide free financial education resources from the early age of like 4 to about 12 to lots and lots of different schools. And we train the teachers as well. And what I was lucky to be part of that, to also make sure that we have accessible resources in Braille copy, for example, large print copies, and nobody's missing out. So for me, that's really important, because growing up, nobody taught me about money. I just sort of fell into it. So the more we can talk and sort of normalize the conversation about money and spending, as long as you're reasonable about spending, then that's fine.
My children, we talk about what inspires you, and inspire is the opposite of expire, right? It's what makes you just, my children. I just adore them. There.
So yeah, mine's twofold as well. So yeah, definitely family, and I can't, like, we're wrapping up, but I can't go this long, although this is about women, without mentioning my husband, because as I say, we're like, we did everything super young. Like, if my son now came to me, because he's 19, and said, I've met someone and I'm getting married, I'd be like, what are you doing? Are you okay? After a year. Well, that's what I did, and so literally it's like, don't repeat what I did, but then it worked out really well for me. So we've been together like literally pretty much my whole adult life, and I wouldn't be here without him. Like, he is literally my support network, my support system, the person who told me I could go do, the person who stopped his dream so I could do mine, all of those things literally. And together, like, for us, in terms of what we are for our children, our family dynamic is like literally my source of energy. It's where I refill. I'm a big high energy person, but if you were to meet him, you have to brace yourself, because he has a much bigger kind of energy than me. So I can't go this whole thing about mentioning him as a source of joy. But what my passion piece is in terms of outside of work is similar to what I do in my day job, and trying to find ways to kind of use my influence. So I spend a lot of time working up north. So Hull, actually trying to expand into kind of Newcastle, Leeds, that area. And bringing opportunities to people from underrepresented communities, so they can have a life and career that doesn't mean they have to move down south to London. So already it's a challenge in terms of being in London, and kind of, we talked about some of the statistics. For women, it gets even harder when you talk about other minority groups. But up north, that's like, it diminishes, right? We're down into the kind of 0%. So there's an organisation that I partner with there, I sit on their board, and it's all about bringing those opportunities up north. It's about influencing educators, influencing the curriculum, basic things that people don't even realise, like, in the pandemic, children who just couldn't even get on an iPad, right, because they just don't have the broadband. And those are local authority decisions that are made in terms of how money is spent. So it's shining a light on those places, going to schools where they'd never have someone who works in a place like mine go up there because they just don't get that, like they do in the kind of London schools, speaking to young people, and then also kind of building this community so people can thrive up north. So I do a lot of work in that space in my spare time.
I was like, what's work-life balance? That's my first reaction. What is that? No, I would say I'm on the board of a non-profit in New York called Outright.
Mm-hmm.
And it's an LGBT plus human rights non-profit. And so it supports queer activists on the ground in regions where it's really challenging to be LGBT plus. So that's kind of like a big passion project for me. I help raise a lot of funds through being on the board with lots of corporates, particularly in the US. I think we raised $1 million at the gala last month, which is pretty amazing. Well, given how much money is funded towards LGBT plus hate, it's something like 100 times more than the funding that goes towards positive interventions. So yeah, there's a lot of work to be done. Yeah. So and I love my nieces. I've got 5 nieces and nephews.
Oh,
up until the age of 11.
Love that.
And my husband's got 2. So between us, we've got 7 and we adore them.
You're like the fun uncle.
Yeah, they're like our kids.
Yeah.
We get to hang out with them and then see you later.
Get them back, yeah.
Bye. Have fun.
For me, work-life balance, which I'm sure you guys can all relate, comes and goes. And sometimes work just really takes over and your life is just a never-ending to-do list. But one thing that I found sparks a lot of joy in my life is all with my routines, like making sure I'm waking up, I'm being mindful, I'm making some time just to read for my own benefit and my own joy, making some time to work out and move my body, because I definitely made the mistake on my journey of growing my business where I would wake up, work all day, go to sleep, over and over and over and over again, and it just burnt me out. So this way I feel like I can stay consistent but also prioritize my happiness.
And I think it's like the concept of balance. Like, people think it needs to be this. That doesn't. That's not what
It
balance
changes
is.
depending on where you're at.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I'm not always sure if work-life balance is a helpful phrase because
Agreed.
Because it implies
Yeah.
50-50.
Exactly.
it's life.
Yeah.
For many of us, work is part of it.
Yeah.
So find something that gives you joy.
Agreed.
Not always, but that there's joy.
There's in there somewhere.
Yes.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for your time today. To finish us off, I want to throw some quick fire questions at you and let's see what comes out. So to start us off, apart from your current role, what job would you like to attempt?
Maths teacher.
Singer or lawyer?
Music producer.
Fashion designer.
If heaven exists, what would you like to hear God say when you arrive at the pearly gates?
You were kind.
I actually don't believe in God, sorry.
You made an impact.
I think she'd say, fancy a cosmopolitan.
I love that. What is your secret skill?
I'm a qualified yoga teacher.
Oh. I used to do Bikram hot yoga.
Playing steel pan.
Oh, wow. I'm pretty good at matchmaking. Not just professionally in terms of like...
Have they stayed together?
Yeah, they have. I've got a few that have actually.
Okay.
Some that haven't also, but I'm pretty good at it. I'm a pretty good matchmaker.
Many, many talents. Love it.
It's an Indian thing.
It is. It actually is. What's your favourite rainy day activity?
Tidying.
Really?
Love organising.
Watching movie, cuddling up with my kids.
That's mine.
Yeah. Sorry, same.
I have to actually say, now you've said that, I have to say, there's something quite cathartic about having a clean out, like Stacey Solomon on Sort Your Life Out.
Oh, yeah.
Like it is, that I would agree with Danny, I would say that.
Just because it starts to rain, you're like, now.
I love it when you
There's
literally
nowhere
do
else
a
to
clear
go.
out. It's
Yeah.
so good.
I was going to, but I can't because it's raining. So
Okay.
What are the 3 least likely words someone would use to describe you?
slow, lazy, negative.
Boring, reserved, uncaring.
Okay, I was going to say, but they've taken a lot of mine. But I'm going to just have to go with them. Boring, average, and lacking energy.
And boring, sad, and lazy.
What's a world record you genuinely believe you could hold?
Most face painting faces, also trained face painters, in an hour.
Are you really trained?
Yeah.
No way.
God, your resume must look great.
I don't
A
believe
woman of many talents.
I really struggle with this one. So I asked my kids and they said the shortest mummy in the world.
That's cute.
Speaking quickly, fastest talker. I could do that.
I would say most see-through shirts in the wardrobe. Hashtag free the nipple.
that. I can vouch for that.
I nearly wore one today and I was like, maybe not for YouTube filming.
What's most likely to distract you when you work from home?
my children.
Yeah, same my children.
Food.
Definitely food. Yeah.
And finally, what's your favourite curse word?
Oh, I can't. My children are going to be watching this and we don't swear as a family. Lordy loo, gosh. Golly gosh. I mean, I can swear like a soldier, but I'm not in front of my children and they might watch it, so I can't.
Oh, I've got one for you. Sugar.
There we go.
But I always say it in, the Maroon 5 Sugar song. So I sing it. Sugar.
Oh!
I feel like it's like Glee being around you. Like I've lived at home with you.
Mine's not in English, so I can say
there you go. You can say
There
it.
we go. See, coq-on-say is in our language, and what it means is it doesn't exist in English. So it's like someone who's like a Judas, a snake, deceitful, like they've kind of tricked you. That's what it.
Well, I mean, you're all being so polite. Mine's dead.
And mine's
I mean, yours is
it.
the most adaptable term, right? It can be an adjective, it can be an accusation, it can be an activity. I get that.
I just love throwing it in a sentence every now and then. Just adds a bit of spice. Love it. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you for sharing such inspiring stories. It was so amazing to hear everything you guys had to share, your journeys, your careers, to just be surrounded by such intelligent, inspiring, hardworking people. Thank you so much, and thank you for having me as well.
Thanks.
Thank
Pam.
you.